Servus Freunde, first of all, I am sorry it took me so long, but like always, I kind of underestimated the work, and after all I want to give you something worth your time. And now we are already at over 1,250 subscribers, so thanks again guys. I was planning to do a Q&A for quite some time, but so far I simply wasn't brave enough. Not because of the questions, but because I thought the channel might still be too small to really get that many. Now the time was right, and I'm quite amazed how many great questions I got from all of you. So let's get started with the first question. This one's from Kayo Uchiha, and it's quite simple. Where are you from? I think you might guess from my thick accent, I'm from Germany. To be more precise, I'm from a little town in North Rhine-Westphalia. North Rhine-Westphalia. It's a little town with about 70,000 residents, which sounds bigger than it actually feels like. But as of right now, it's been 10 years that I don't live there anymore. I now live in the capital of Austria, Vienna. Darius Asadi, who's following my channel for a long time now, asks, what are you studying at the moment? Right now, I'm not studying, at least not at the university, because I already did. This was the reason I moved here. I've studied film and communications. Film not like in being a director or a cinematographer, but like in film history and film theory. I wrote my final thesis about color films during World War II. At the moment, I'm working full-time at a small Austrian film distribution company as an assistant in marketing and press. Fortunately, I'm able to organize my workload quite freely so that I can make room for 1 or 2 press screenings each week, which are of course in the morning. Matthew Haynes asks, how old are you and what made you decide to review movies? I'm old. Not like really old, but old nevertheless, since I reached the big 30 half a year ago. This year will make the 10th anniversary of reviewing movies for me, but there were some long breaks in between. It was in an early semester that I met new friends who were doing an online blog about movies. It was called Movie Nerd, and I joined them and wrote many reviews over the years. They were still all in German though. So what made me decide to do it? Well, I'm loving movies and I love to talk about it. It was a great opportunity to see a lot of films and even better, get to see them early and also for free at press screenings. It gave us also the chance to visit some cool film festivals as well. The site kind of died a few years ago, and that's when I decided to continue on YouTube, going video, English, and see how that turns out. And so far, I'm quite happy. Gonzalo Fernandez asks a bunch of questions, so let's go through them one by one. Is there any film critic you admire? My favorite YouTube channel when it comes to film reviews and analysis is without a doubt Red Letter Media. They are very cynical and negative, so actually very different from my approach to movies, but man are they good in pointing out what's wrong with something. I must have watched the Plinkett reviews of the Star Wars prequels multiple times, and each of them is more than an hour long. The film critics I admire are the ones who keep doing reviews, give their honest opinions and be at least a little bit entertaining while doing so. I follow the Schmoes, Duckman, Jans, but honestly I don't watch all the reviews. I really like to go fresh into a movie, but I love to listen to their opinions on anything movie related each day when it comes to Collider Movie Talk. Or of course the Schmoes No Show. I have a long way to work and Movie Talk is a really great way to start my day. Catching the news, listening to movie discussions. I admire these people because they are joy and passion and also the crude humor they bring to the table. What's your favorite film director? I love old movies, like really old movies, and my favorite director has to be Frank Capra. I'm so into stories about the good in people, about positive characters, the little people, the common man. The crazy thing is that there are directors who probably made more films in their careers that I love, but it's not about quantity, it's about the message and the feeling of a Capra movie, and it's also about a collaboration with James Stewart, who happens to be my favorite actor of all time. So here are my top 3 favorite films by Frank Capra. Number 3, It's a Wonderful Life. Number 2, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. And my number 1, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. But I also have to put out my second and third favorite directors, since it's so close and I could easily argue for both of them being my number 1 as well. On the second place is Billy Wilder, and third is Alfred Hitchcock. Jamie Puth, or Jamie Forth, I'm sorry, no idea how to pronounce her name, but he asks, who are your top 10 directors of this century? So when we're talking about century, I guess that's 2000 until now. I wouldn't feel good about just ranking them on the spot, so this list won't be in any particular order. There are a lot of directors I absolutely love who are still alive and doing movies, but when they didn't make the best movies in the years since 2000, I don't include them here. So here are my picks: Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, Park Chan-wook, Hayao Miyazaki, Denis Villeneuve, Damien Chazelle, Martin Scorsese, Paul Thomas Anderson, Mel Gibson and J.J. Abrams. Another question by Gonzalo Fernandez. What's your favorite score or soundtrack composer? It's tough to give a definitive answer with naming just one particular score. I love John Williams and what he has done, especially for Star Wars. I also listened to Howard Shore's soundtrack for the Lord of the Rings trilogy numerous times. Besides them, my favorite composers are Ennio Morricone and also James Horner. And even though some of his recent works got very predictable, Hans Zimmer has composed so many memorable soundtracks over the years. And I'm really into Philip Glass as well. My two recommendations for you: the soundtrack of The Thin Red Line and also The Thin Blue Line. The names match is just pure chance. But I can't go to the next question without mentioning the Italian band Goblin, which composed almost all of the iconic Dario Argento movies. You have to listen to Profondo Rosso, aka Deep Red, and Tenebrae. What's your favorite opening scene of a film and why? Let me first say that I'm a big fan of opening credits. Nowadays movies tend to omit them completely, with not even the title of the movie popping up until the end credits. But I'm really into the art of cool opening credits because there are just so many creative ways of doing them. I like to know who was involved, and even if it's just the names on top of some shots, the way they are timed, and for example which shot they use for the last and most important one, the director, can be quite interesting and cool. But on the other hand, some of my most beloved openings of all time, abandon credits. I think the movie that has to make every great opening scene list is Star Wars. It's not only iconic as hell, but it's also great storytelling and visualizing who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, and in what relation they stand to each other. Another great beginning is the opening of The Dark Knight, where we not only witness one of the coolest bank robberies ever, but also the introduction to one of cinema's best villains, the Joker.
Whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
I still remember working at a movie theater at the time The Dark Knight was released, and I watched that opening again and again, and it never got old. But coming back to opening credits, here is one old and one new that get me totally pumped each time. The new one was Gareth Edwards' Godzilla. I loved Alexander Desplat's soundtrack, and I'm a sucker for openings that give you a cool rundown on the stuff that happened before. Spider-Man 2 did a great job on that regard as well. The old one I have to mention is The Good, the Bad and the Ugly by the great Sergio Leone, featuring one of the best scores ever written by Ennio Morricone. Basically just some monochrome images and the names of the people who made this incredible movie, but combined with that score. Man, there are just so many amazing opening scenes. Take for example the Naked Gun series, where they drive in a kind of first-person view to different places, starting normal just on the streets, then the sidewalk, a car wash, into a house, and even riding a roller coaster at the end. And of course the sequels go even more ludicrous, until they are doing the Death Star trench run themselves. Another comedy series with great openings is the Pink Panther franchise, and of course I mean the original ones with the great Peter Sellers. But I guess the Steve Martin ones might have nice animated openings as well. I just never saw them and I have no interest in checking them out either. The films I mean. I should watch the intros. One last opening that I love with a passion is Batman Returns. Tim Burton movies in general tend to have great opening credits, but this one is out of the world for me. Told completely without words, you witness the dark and sad origin of the Penguin, and then the moment that little abandoned child is tossed down the sewer, the credits begin to appear, and Danny Elfman's iconic Batman score, still my favorite one by far, slowly begins to build up and then explodes into awesomeness. Speaking of superhero movies, I thought Guardians of the Galaxy, my favorite one of the MCU, has an amazing opening. First, that emotional gut punch with Peter Quill and his mom, then the abduction into space, and then old school opening credits with a cool song to it. I also loved the beginning of Inglourious Basterds, Suspiria, Once Upon a Time in the West, Rear Window, Patton, The Lion King, Up, and of course Raiders of the Lost Ark. And a late addition, the Lego Batman movie. There's so much going on there, it would have been enough for another movie's finale. I'm 100% sure I forgot a lot, but you can fill many videos with just talking about awesome movie openings. And also about favorite scenes of all time, which was another question. When I love a scene or a sequence in a movie, I normally say something like, so far the movie was like 8 out of 10, but from this moment on it's 17,000 out of 10. One of those moments is in the Fellowship of the Ring, when we see what Saruman is up to in Isengard. The Howard Shore music and those tracking shots get me every single time. I love it. Music plays a very important role in many of my favorite movie scenes. Another example is a simple scene in Home Alone. The moment Kevin is leaving the church, the clock reminds him he has to hurry home to defend it against the burglars. It's basically just him running through some empty streets, but with the music by John Williams and that feeling of standing one's ground, fighting the bad guys. I'm such a sucker for stuff like this. As a child, I watched that moment over and over again. There are just so many moments you could list. One of the scenes that got to me, like very few others, is the moment in The Thin Red Line when the American soldiers are raiding a village, accompanied by Hans Zimmer's mesmerizing soundtrack. It's pure horror, the horror of war. I cried each time I watched it and I get goosebumps just talking about it. People running, firing, screaming, crying, it's extremely powerful. A favorite scene from a horror movie is the dinner sequence in the original The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It disturbed me so much watching this as an adolescent. The first time I watched it was on my PC in a very low quality, directly in front of the display with headphones on. I didn't know what to expect, and the raw nature of the movie totally got me by surprise, and the mad editing with those extreme close-ups of eyes in terror haunt me to this day. But in a good way, I love that movie. Another pick from a horror movie is the finale of The Silence of the Lambs, in the basement of Buffalo Bill with the night goggles on. And from Buffalo Bill to a Wild Bill in The Green Mile, even though he's not even in the scene I want to mention. It's the one where they have to execute one of the prisoners, and that little shit weasel Percy didn't soak the sponge. What follows is one of the most gruesome deaths in cinema, and it's the pain of Michael Clarke Duncan's character that hits me right in the heart. Two other amazing scenes are the finale in The Good, The Bad and The Ugly, those never-ending shots with nothing but Morricone music to them, and then the tavern scene in Inglourious Basterds, which is just nerve-wracking. I could also include just so many scenes from Star Wars, but that brings me to the next question by Ben Crossley. What's your favorite Star Wars moment? I give you 3. The sunset scene on Tatooine where Luke is looking at the horizon, dreaming of adventure, and the music by John Williams is just epic beyond anything you can imagine. My next pick is from Empire, when Leia, Han, Chewie and 3PO are trying to outrun those Star Destroyers. Those space scenes with the way the ships are moving towards the foreground, combined again with Williams' score, seeing that as a little child has forever laid the ground for my passion for movies.
So what?
Star Destroyers, 2 of them coming right up. Take evasive action.
And my number 1 favorite Star Wars moment, and probably in all of cinema.
No, I am your father.
There was a time in my life where I watched this scene each and every day after I come home from school. You have to understand, I grew up watching Star Wars only in German, and suddenly with the release of the DVDs there was the opportunity to see them in their original language. For the first time. And while the dub was pretty great and iconic, all of a sudden I was just so into the voice of James Earl Jones, and that scene got even more exhilarating for me. And that brings me to the next question, because Jamie Futh asks how to translate the following scene into German.
You stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder.
Who's scruffy looking?
Sie aufgeblasener, schwachsinniger, mieser, widerwärtiger Wookie-Treiber. Wait a minute, she doesn't say Wookie in English. No, she doesn't, but I guess they thought no one here would understand what a nerf is, so they changed it to Wookie. And we are still continuing with Empire, as the next question by Zach Antle on Twitter is: what's your favorite movie ever? And it's The Empire Strikes Back. Apart from the original Star Wars and Return of the Jedi, there is no other movie I've seen that many times. It might add up to nearly 100, I'm sure. There were times where I answered the question with 2 other ones, and those are Old Boy, the original one of course, and Vertigo. Wesley J 4700 asks, are there any movies that have been very influential to you in your life? I think the movies that were most influential are also the ones I appreciate most, and therefore I have to point to Star Wars again. And Old Boy, because it just came out around the time I finished school, and I think it wasn't all that uninvolved in my decision to go study film science in Vienna. In my early 20s, the films of Frank Capra were very important to me, as well as rediscovering Star Trek. It's the positive thinking, the good in human nature that those movies and series transpire, and which is a big part of my persona as well. At least I hope so. Do you like ice cream? Thanks for changing it up, Isra Al-Khatib. And the answer is yes, sure. Even though I'm not really a sweet tooth. Erika M asks, are you familiar with Wong Kar-wai films? Yes, I am. Even before moving to Austria, I started to get into the Criterion Collection, and my introduction to his work was In a Mood for Love. I haven't seen all of his movies, but the ones I saw I really liked. My favorite ones are probably Fallen Angels and Chungking Express. But unfortunately I was really let down by his latest one, The Grandmaster. Shai Furstenberg asks, what is your guilty pleasure? That's a great question, and I'm not sure if this movie counts because there are many people who love it, and it's even in the Criterion Collection. Armageddon. I'm a huge sucker for it, and there are at least 2 moments I could instantly cry.
There is one thing that has nourished our souls and elevated our species above its origins, and that is our courage. The dreams of an entire planet are focused tonight on those 14 brave souls traveling into the heavens.
That man's not a salesman. That's your daddy.
We win, Gracie! Press it!
Another movie I absolutely adore is Speed Racer, which was completely panned by critics. It's a visual blast and so sweet, your teeth will hurt just by watching it. And this might go a little bit contrary to my answer to the next question. What are your thoughts on the use of CGI? In Speed Racer there's CGI everywhere, and normally that's the opposite of what I like, but there's always the exception that proves the rule. CGI is a great way to tell the story you want to tell, but I think you should use it with care and if possible try as much as you can with practical effects. The Force Awakens was a great example of a good combination, I thought. Real sets, props and actors are something different than composing each and every part of your movie on a PC. I especially prefer practical effects when it comes to action and horror. CG blood or bullet holes are just the worst, and all the best and gruesome things were done practically, and if it's done right, it will hold up. And even if you can tell an effect has aged, that's fine as well, because I think that's part of what makes movies so great. To go back into a different time and era, not just with the story and setting, but also with the movie itself. When I see an old movie, I don't think, oh, the effects were bad, today you could have done a better job. I think it's fascinating how they were achieving the things they did back then, and to see it this way is one of the reasons I want to watch an old movie. And just think about films like Carpenter's The Thing, Cronenberg's The Fly, or Scott's Alien, or the very first King Kong from the 30s. Marvelous work. Tom Cabler asks, how did you get started on YouTube and why did you pick the subject of movies? Which brings me also to another question by Gonzalo Fernandez. Will you ever do gaming videos again? Because I actually started on YouTube by doing Let's Plays. After some months I started doing movie reviews too, because like I said, I was doing movie reviews before for German Blog and I wanted to continue with it. Will I do gaming videos again? At this moment I don't think so. First and foremost, I simply don't have the time. Working full-time at a normal job, I don't have enough time as it is to do everything movie related I'd like to do. Another reason is that I don't think my reviews and my Let's Plays go together that well. I don't want to add Let's Play parts because the reviews, which are more special to me and demand more work, would kind of drown in the crowd, and I also don't think the audience would match, at least at this point. I don't rule it out completely to do something gaming related in the future, but right now it's highly unlikely. And this brings me to the final question, which I got from Jovan Nathaniel G. What do you use as a motivation for keeping reviewing movies? Well, new movies. I love movies and I love to see as many as I reasonably can, and reviewing them also helps me to keep up to date with everything coming out and happening in the industry. With a movie reviewing channel like this, it's also very helpful to set yourself goals. Not any goals, but ones that will help you stay motivated. I would advise to think about short-term goals as well as long-term goals. I try to steadily build my subscriber count, and the last month has shown me that people out there like to see my stuff, and I can't tell you how cool it is to wake up each day and see new comments under my videos. I'm already at a point where there's not a single day my cell phone isn't blinking in the morning with some new notifications. So please keep commenting and I will keep answering. And of course, putting out new videos. Your support really means a lot to me and helps me putting more energy into this project. And if we're continuing this way, I hope to put up some new ideas and formats in the future as well. And until then, have a great time, guys.